Good evening to all of you. Thank you for hosting me at this meeting, but I will speak in French, if you don't mind. Je voudrais donc prendre la parole ici au nom du président de la République démocratique du Congo, Monsieur.
To speak French, and I would like to convey kindest regard of our president. Mr. Tshisekedi unfortunately has other commitments. I just want to emphasize that Germany, under the leadership of Ms. Angela Merkel, that was really a very important partner for our energy transition. As you all know, the main sources for green energy that make it possible for the world to move towards green energy and to achieve the targets that we have agreed upon in 2020. And all of these assets that we need, all these raw materials we need are in Africa. We'd like to be a strategic partner for Germany, but not only in the area of raw material supplies. We also would like to be a strategic partner, that is to say, a partner taking care of all spheres of activity. Africa wants to have processing assets as well for our raw materials, and thanks to German technology, I think we can build up such production sites. We would like to produce green energy ourselves, to make it available to Africans and to make it available for the world at large. Today, we have 1.4 billion inhabitants in Africa. Most of them are young. Many of them are under 25 years of age. That is a huge potential in terms of consumers, because 30% of the population, if they have a good average, then we will have a market that is just as big as the European or American markets. The future of democracy, of business, of climate, all of that depends very much also on the African continent. And so for our future to be successful, we need to invest. And we cannot just sit back and wait until Africa is as perfect as Switzerland is. No, investment must start today. We do have an enormous deficit when it comes to infrastructure development. That is a factor that hampers economic development. We have a deficit in terms of infrastructures investments, and we need to catch up. We need an intelligent, flexible infrastructure. We have to overcome the mistakes of the past. We must do that quickly because it's so urgent. It's urgent in terms of our climate, it's important for our population, and it's especially important for youth. Alternative financing mechanisms in recent years have not helped to achieve our goals. Many of our African countries have very high sovereign debt. And maybe we didn't have the good projects. Maybe we were not courageous enough. Everybody who can make financial assets available for Africa should be brought on board. We need to give Africa the opportunity to develop. Otherwise, Africa will have a problem. We'll never be able to attract enough funding, and that will be a burden for everyone. It's all about developing a common financing model for infrastructure. Africa urgently needs that. The European Union has already proposed financing models, and there could be contracts, including, of course, Berlin, and so therefore international transparency standards need to be taken into account. What we want to have is also a cooperation with Europe. We would like to have a very strong political and economic project when it comes to large-scale projects to be carried out in Africa. We need accessible financing mechanisms, and we need a commitment that makes it possible for Africans to use those financial assets in a meaningful way, that they can manage their projects and that they can give guarantees to their European partners, namely guarantees of transparency for our large-scale projects. We do have our experience in the past. Usually there was a big project which was proposed to the world as a unique opportunity, and Europe was to be the driving force, and in particular Germany is supposed to be the driving force when it comes to new projects. Today we already import turbines from Germany for energy generation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We also have major opportunities in the transport sector, major untapped potentials. And there's also the need to give African young people an opportunity so they do no longer consider to cross the Mediterranean in order to come to European capitals and have no place to stay. We can only succeed together. We need to see where the difficulties are in financing today and how we could overcome our financial problems we still have. So we need to work on common projects, and we as the African continent would be willing and ready to be your partner to make things happen and implement things successfully together with Germany, together with Europe. Many African countries have joined the Compact with Africa initiative launched by Germany. And the Democratic Republic of Congo also is a partner. Our membership will soon happen. So this is the attitude of our government of the Republic of Congo. And our president, Tshisekedi, who is currently president of the African Union, also supports the Compact with Africa project. I would like to thank
Merci beaucoup, Excellence, pour votre engagement en faveur de l'économie allemande. Oui, merci beaucoup.
All the sectors are very dynamic. During the crisis, not only the digital sector, but the agriculture sector, the manufacturing, everybody was still very, very dynamic. At the same time, also, Africa has access to cheap raw materials, of course. The reforms that we are doing, in particular the G20, the Compact with Africa, the doing business reforms, are making our economies also more competitive compared to other regions of the world. We are also more focused on vocational training now, more than ever than before. And that it's good for you, it's good for us as well, and good for the companies as well. It's less hard, it's now easier to find talent on the continent. You don't have to import workers when you're doing business in Africa. For example, Institut Pasteur of Dakar, which exists for more than 100 years today, has more than 500 staff with PhDs, technicians, and everything. We have only 5 experts out of 500. So it's less than about 1%. So it's very important to say all of that will make us more competitive. But also the risk premium is reducing. It is making us more competitive, which means that the IRR as an investor that you used to ask for, to demand 10 years ago compared to now, it has reduced. 10 years ago, you do an IPP in Senegal, you request 20% IRR as an investor, maybe even 22%. Today, if you want to do an IPP, you're going to be hoping to be satisfied with an equity IRR of maybe 14%. If you want more, then it's going to be difficult. So on the energy side, so this is one tip as well. We are more competitive as well because we have more access to cheap debt financing. If you are a company investing in Africa today, you have the commercial banks, the private sector window of the regional development banks, the African Development Bank, BOAD, TDB, Southern African Development Bank, etc. So all of that will make your cost of capital less, which makes you also more competitive as well. So all of this to say, we are more competitive and we are doing more to be even more competitive in the future. But our interest as governments is more to do with job creations. We want more investments that create more jobs. And therefore, we want to have companies that will come and manufacture in Africa, process the raw material in Africa, entirely or semi-processing, have more value created in Africa, pay the tax also in Africa, and take your returns out whenever you want, because almost all the countries in Africa don't have restrictions on taking back your capital. But our regional market, the WAMU region, for example, with 8 countries, we share one same currency, pegged to euro. So as a German investor, it's almost like you're investing in euro, so you don't have the foreign exchange risk, which is extremely important. So, and there is stability on that exchange as well. And the interest rate also is low compared to countries that don't have that kind of currency.
If I may now hand the floor to the present chair of the African Union, President Félix Tshisekedi, that is. You have the floor.
Madame la chancelière de la République fédérale d'Allemagne, mesdames et messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, mesdames et messieurs en vos titres et qualités, c'est un immense honneur pour moi de prendre la parole au nom de l'Afrique à l'occasion de ce 4e sommet du pacte du G20 avec l'Afrique, Compact with Africa, conjointement présidé par la République fédérale d'Allemagne et la République d'Afrique du Sud. Mesdames et messieurs, le pacte du G20 pour l'Afrique est une initiative visant à soutenir une croissance forte et inclusive des économies africaines à travers la promotion de réformes structurelles contribuant à la mobilisation des investissements privés. Dans le contexte actuel, marqué par la crise sanitaire due à la pandémie de la COVID-19, les économies africaines ont d'importants besoins de financement pour redresser leurs trajectoires économiques. Certes, nous avons consenti des efforts pour limiter ce choc sans précédent, mais les mesures...
in the direction of growth and to bolster the shock they've suffered. But the measures we've taken to support our economies lag behind the measures taken in other parts of the world. For example, when you look to the developed world, the highly developed countries, the recovery that we see taking hold now threatens to be unbalanced and unequal and threatens to drive a wedge between different countries. I believe that the G20 Compact with Africa will help us channel further investments, which will allow us to focus on the African continent by enhancing our cooperation with the European Union, and also as a consequence of the fact that the African economies will be placed on a path leading to sustainable and positive growth. If I may express a wish in that regard, I hope for a win-win partnership between all member states of the G20 and the Compact with Africa countries. Africa has enormous commodities, raw materials, resources to offer. The Compact with Africa is very important in order to overcome the infrastructural deficit that exists. Over the last few years, we have not yet been able to make great headway in that regard. Some African countries were running up debts that were far too high. A financing model that aims to help us fund the infrastructure projects we need is something that we ought to discuss with the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank our multilateral partners for their financial support for the African continent. And here, I especially welcome the fact that the $650 billion SDRs have been allocated by the IMF in order to respond to the funding needs of the African economies. The $33 billion set aside for African economies are insufficient, however, if we are to achieve the desired objectives. Allow me to remind you of the target we agreed on at the Paris Summit to reach as many as $100 billion. So we suggest that the SDRs of the rich countries that don't need them should be channeled to other countries, and thus may be available to them. And allow me to close by calling upon each and everyone to mobilize our forces, to thus allow access to vaccines also for all the people on the African continent. Production capacities need to be built up. It's important that we build up production sites in Africa if we are to effectively and successfully fight such pandemics in future and to make our economies more resilient. A final word of gratitude goes out to South Africa and Germany for hosting this meeting of the Compact with Africa. I reaffirm the commitment on the part of the African Union to continue to work alongside you in this very important initiative. Tshisekedi. Perhaps, if I may, we could now also ask the Republic of Congo. We would like to welcome the Republic of Congo. We will have the opportunity to address you later. As I said earlier, today a G20 investment summit has taken place, and some of us participated in that summit. We want to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak, what was discussed at that conference. We have here Mr. Grosse from Safi, we have Mr. Mansour, the CEO of SAP Egypt, we have Patricia Pogodiami, the CEO of Plot Enterprise Ghana Limited, and Stefan Liebing, the chair of